It's no secret that the tech industry is in pretty dire straits right now. Junior engineers aren't being hired. Big companies laying people off left, right and centre. Everyone's losing their jobs to ChatGPT. AI is going to take over the world. Yeah. It's not quite that, it's not all doom and gloom. In this video I'm going to tell you why it's not all doom and gloom. You might just have to do some unorthodox stuff these days to sort of stand out from the competition. Gone are the days of cold applying to job ads on LinkedIn, because that's not really going to help you stand out. Or it's going to be very difficult anyway. In this video I'm going to explain how you can stand out, how I got my first role, and how you guys can use that sort of mentality to sort of go about things in a slightly different way and hopefully stand out from the crowd. But if you're new to the channel, hello. I'm Steve-O. We talk about dev things here, quite simply. I'm a self-taught engineer who likes to talk about my experiences in tech and hear from you guys about your experiences in tech. And that's pretty much the gist of it. But yeah, if you like this sort of stuff, like, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in a subsequent video. But for now, let's dive into it. So first of all, I'm going to preface this video by saying that this video sort of assumes that you're at the job ready stage, or you might consider yourself job ready at the very least. What I mean by job ready, basically that means if, say, for example, you're a software engineer, that would mean that you've gone through sort of all the basic programming fundamentals. You know, you've learned your sort of programming language or various programming languages, frameworks, libraries, tools, things like that. Whether you're sort of QA, product, or any other sort of craft within the tech space, there'll be similar sort of rules there that apply to you. Sort of some basic skills that might be expected of you to enter the industry, basically. There might be an entry-level job at the end of the day, but there is still some level of knowledge or familiarity expected with some of the tools and things that these companies use on a day-to-day basis. That being said, you might not necessarily go to work for a company, for an employer in the traditional sense. You might go about that in a slightly different way, and obviously we'll get into that as we get more into the video. But yeah, this video obviously assumes that you have that base level knowledge. So anyway, with that out of the way, how did I get my first job? I got my first role sort of at the end of 2020, start of 2021. So this was still very much at the height of the pandemic. This was before the sort of big hiring boom in 2021, where everyone was suddenly being hired by everyone, seemingly no end to it. And then of course that's all came sort of crashing down recently as everyone sort of came back down from the clouds. This was just sort of before all that. As I said, very much still in the height of the pandemic. So no one was really hiring. It's kind of similar to the current market conditions just now. No one was hiring juniors. There was still some. I would say it was maybe slightly better than what it is now, but it wasn't great. So I wasn't getting much luck. I was doing the sort of typical cold applying to job ads and things on LinkedIn. You know, pressing the LinkedIn easy apply button, the infamous easy apply button. And that never works, by the way. It might have worked for you or someone that you know, but for most people that rarely works. There's just so many people that sort of apply that way. It's such an easy barrier to entry. It just makes it very, very difficult to stand out, basically. So you want to probably avoid those. But because of how easy it is, it's a bit like playing the lottery, right? It doesn't take much effort. Just kind of press the button and see what happens, right? It's not the way I would try and get my first job. So how did I do it? Basically, I didn't apply in the traditional sense for a job at all, right? So what happened to me was I actually contacted a company, or someone at a company more specifically, via LinkedIn, to be fair. LinkedIn's a very good tool, by the way. You will want to use it for any sort of job stuff that you do, networking and things like that. It's a very useful tool. I basically DM'd someone at a company that I'd applied for probably about a year prior, before I even started learning programming in a sort of professional sense. It was a totally unrelated position, wasn't anything to do with software. It was actually more of a sales position. It was tech adjacent because I was selling software, but it wasn't like coding or anything like that. It wasn't anything like that. It was just a sales position. So I didn't get that job, actually. This was when I was still in the tourism industry, so didn't have a lot of sales experience as such, and yeah, just wasn't really suitable for the role, really. But we kept in touch. And I contacted this guy again about a year later, basically. I explained everything that I'd learned in sort of the past year or so. I knew for a fact that as a company, it was a marketing agency, so they were mainly based in sort of building websites for people to, you know, generate leads and stuff like that. Selling websites to people who might want stuff like that, to businesses, to people. So there was a lot of like sort of WordPress, PHP and things like that that I knew they would need. But also the off chance they might do some custom apps. I got in touch anyway to see if that was the kind of thing they had capacity for as well. As I said, explained everything that I'd done for sort of the last year or so. And the guy, funnily enough, remembered me and looked at all my stuff and thought, that's really impressive. I've only spoken to this guy about a year ago and they had done none of this stuff. So I'd obviously gone through all the process of learning the basics of programming and things like that. I went for a coding boot camp and all that sort of stuff, as was popular at the time. And I learned a lot of stuff really quickly, to be fair. Built projects, things like that, and everything that people are normally told to do. And that's the kind of stuff I was showing off, basically. But I was sort of just selling myself on that idea that, you know, I'm a really fast learner, basically. This is the kind of stuff I can build on my own, using my own initiative, my own money to invest into myself and things like that. And this is the sort of turnaround of that in a year. This is everything I've done in a year. And he was impressed by that to the point where he then spoke to the relevant manager who was sort of in charge of the web design team to see if they had capacity for a developer. And coincidentally enough, it turned out that they did. Just to get about a month or so later, I was working there. They were looking to potentially hire a developer in the new year. This was sort of at the end of 2020, as I said. Basically, my ticket, my gateway into the industry. And since then, I don't think I've ever really applied for a job in the traditional sense, really. Since then, it's been sort of recruiters and things like that, but once you've got experience, and recruiters will give you the time of day sort of thing. But the rest of it is just sort of selling yourself. Recruiters kind of just do that for you. It's a different version of the same thing. You don't necessarily need a recruiter to do that. It's just maybe easier. Basically, you just sort of have to learn how to sell yourself to a company. It's similar to what freelancers do when they sell websites to businesses and clients and things like that. They're usually selling something that will help them solve their problem. So you have to find something somewhere. They might not necessarily be necessarily looking for people, but if you can identify a company who may require some kind of services from someone from the likes of yourself, then you should, you know, get in touch and see if they have capacity for that sort of thing. And it is just sort of about just getting out of there, asking the questions, and the worst they can say is no, basically. Just sell your skills and tell them the kind of stuff you've been doing and the kind of stuff you want to do. So that's basically how I got my first job, and it's my first tip, basically. Tip number one is just DM people. Go out your way to sell yourself to various businesses and people that you may have connected with in the past, or, you know, network with people. This is why people tell people to network as well. It's super important because you might meet someone who then gets a job somewhere, or someone who starts up their own business or their own project or something like that. You can then go to them and go, hello, remember me? I do this stuff. I could help you out with your project, your business, whatever it is. And, you know, the rest is history, hopefully. As I said, the worst thing they can say is no. The second tip is to work on projects. And now I don't mean personal projects, although that might work if you turn it into a business. But what I mean is projects that involve other people, right? You want to collaborate with other people. You may not necessarily get paid for it, but it's good experience. It's good experience working in a team. And you might potentially produce something at the end of it that could end up being a business that you're sort of on the ground floor of. But it might just be something a bit more sort of tech for good, charity-based, non-profit-based. That's quite common as well, especially among graduates and juniors and things. They sort of pull their skills together and use that to create something good for charities and non-profits and, you know, various sort of people in need of tech for some particular reason. For example, in Scotland, we have something here called the Scottish Tech Army. I was involved in that a little bit, sort of in my early days of coding as well. Not so much these days because I've, you know, been busy doing other things and working and stuff, but I always advocate people go there, especially if they're new to the industry. They've always got tons of projects on the go, people who are new and sort of have been around for a while, a good mixture, not even just people from Scotland, but people from all over the world, really, working on different projects for different people, usually something that's providing something good for communities, basically. And yeah, it can be for a really good cause, and you gain experience as well by doing it. So something like that, if it's not Scottish Tech Army, it's something similar. Find some kind of non-profit group somewhere, some kind of charity that's running a similar kind of thing. It might not exist necessarily where you are, but it's an idea to look for. Or you can even start your own thing, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean you can't start your own thing. You can definitely do it yourself as well. That's an idea if you've got something like that. You could join the STA as well if you're UK based, or even in Europe, anywhere just sort of within that sort of time zone is probably the best bet, because they're all remote, so they all just sort of operate from Slack. So you don't necessarily need to be in Scotland. So it just so happens that it originates from Scotland. But anyway, that's an idea as well. But you might not want to necessarily volunteer or anything like that. You could just get involved in, say, open source as well. Any sort of open source project that you like the look of, you want to contribute to. Working and contributing in open source projects is absolutely a way to get some experience under your belt. You can put that stuff in your CV, make you more sort of attractive to companies and things. That's absolutely still advice that's worth taking. Open source is a great thing. So always, if you can, contribute to your favorite sort of open source projects. So do that stuff as well. Of course, there's also the third option of collaborating. Say you've been on a coding boot camp and you've met a few people and they want to start up a project, or maybe you want to start up a project and you want to potentially turn it into a business or something like that. You don't even need to go down the employment route. You can pull all your skills together and create something for profit, create a business. That's something that does happen. It's usually not the case for a lot of bootcamp grads. A lot of them are trying to find jobs, but there might be some people, some like-minded people who want to actually create a business. You might have an app idea or something like that. Someone else you know might have an app idea that you really like the idea of and want to work on. So yeah, find a few people who are like-minded and have an app idea that they all want to get involved in and create a business out of it. Basically solve a problem for a particular niche somewhere. There's still plenty of problems to be solved. It's just sometimes hard to find them, right? Because I mean, a lot of them have been solved, I guess. But it's finding the right problems to solve as well. Because obviously, there's some things that the reason they haven't been solved is because, well, there's no money in it. That might not be important to you either. It might also just be like a sort of non-profit thing or something just to get some experience. Maybe it's just something you're passionate about. But obviously, we're speaking in terms of a job replacement here, so you probably do want to have a sort of for-profit thing going. So yeah, by all means, do that. Go down the business route. That being said, maybe you don't want to do that, but you still want a job. But you know, it's, as I said, looking a bit doom and gloom, and it's difficult to do that. You can sort of blend the two, if that makes sense. So you can get a job by starting a business. Right, this is a bit of a trick, a bit of a hack, admittedly, but you can take your personal projects and create a business from them. They don't necessarily need to be successful, but you're effectively the CEO of that business. Even if you're a sole trader, you know, you run a business, right? So you could create some kind of app or project of some kind, and then trademark a business under it, and then you could be sort of in charge of everything of that business, and or even potentially hire some of your fellow sort of coding bootcamp graduates or anyone else who's on the sort of same journey as you, sort of hire them as employees as well, or as co-founders or whatever you want, and create a bit of a business out of it. Obviously, you'd have to come up with a sort of backstory as to why you want to move into employment as opposed to running a business, but you know, I'm sure you could come up with that story. Or you don't necessarily need to come up with a story. You could do both simultaneously. That could be the story, right? You could actually make a business and then also get employed at the same time and use the experience of creating the business to appear attractive to companies. That sounds a little bit convoluted and maybe even a bit disingenuous to some people, but it is a genuine way of gaining experience. Just go out there and create the experience for yourself, right? If you can't rely on other people to do it for you, then do it yourself. Basically, that's kind of the advice there. You might even decide that you would rather run a business by doing that as well. A lot of people come to that realization after having experienced both sides effectively. Tip number 3, around 3, I don't know, I'm forgetting at this point. Another tip, that suffices. Another tip. Freelancing. I'm sure you've heard this in multiple places, but still very much a viable thing. I think people just do it wrong. I wasn't particularly cut out for it. It's not the type of thing I want to do personally, but some people might be better at it. Freelancing is actually more of a sales kind of job, right? So yes, you run a business and things like that. There's generally not much coding in creating websites for businesses for a lot of these freelancing companies. A lot of what they do is based on templates, and the reason they do that is so they can get websites out the door really quickly. They just throw the content on for that particular business, and then they move on to the next one, and that's how they make their money, right? And then they charge them for maintenance and hosting and things like that. And that's kind of the job there. There isn't really much going on in terms of innovative tech or anything, or any particularly interesting projects. Usually the right way to do freelancing is you find a local, or a range of local businesses in a particular niche. You sort of focus down on a particular niche that you know quite well, in an area that you know quite well. You don't want to just choose some random area, say across the world, right? You want to try and go preferably somewhere local. And you want to try and find a niche that you know quite well, as I said, or you've got some familiarity around, you know how to speak their language, you know what kind of problems that need to be solved for that type of business, and knowing that you can then solve that problem by basically selling your services to them, framing it in a way where it solves their problem, and even show them an example. As I said, a lot of these freelancing companies use templates. You can take one of your templates, put their content on it, and show them an actual example of your work. And usually that example can be the make or break between actually selling your services to a business. They'll see that you've already created something for them, and they go, oh, I really like that, and they'll want that for their website. They think that's really nice, I want to use that for my website. So that, more often than not, will seal the deal, if it's good, obviously. And that's kind of how freelancing's done, really. You just kind of have to prove to businesses that you're there to solve a problem, and what you're offering them, in fact, solves their problem. Talking all the sort of tech jargon and things to a business owner, they're not going to care, right? It's not going to make any sort of difference to whether they sort of buy into it or not. They're just not going to really understand, or they might understand, but as I said, they might just not care. They might not see how it solves their problem, sort of thing, or they might not see how it's worth it, or why, you know, how to justify the cost or something like that. By being able to demonstrate, you know, your skills, how it solves their problem, and even a visual example, all that stuff kind of blends in to create something that hopefully converts a lot more often. And I think a lot of devs don't really realize that and try and sell them on their technical skills like you would do at a traditional interview for a job, which doesn't really work. It's quite a different approach. So if that's the kind of thing you're interested in, freelancing is by all means still an option. It's just a lot of people do it wrong, I think, and think that it doesn't work. But it absolutely does work. You just have to be the right kind of person to do it. The next tip number 4, I don't know, the next tip, CVs. All the stuff that I've said is fine and dandy, but it doesn't really help you if you can't translate that into a nice readable format, you know, to actually get the interview for a job. So CVs quite often are quite bad. CV, resume, whatever you call it. It should ideally be easy to read and showcase all the stuff that's relevant for the job that you're going for. A lot of people get the CV, resume part wrong, and they blame the market for their shortfall, basically, and not being able to get interviews. I don't think CVs should be the reason that people aren't getting jobs. Because in this day and age, especially in the days of AI and things, and the amount of different templates and all the ideas and things are on the internet now that can translate into a really good CV. You just kind of have to do a bit of research into what a good CV includes. You know, spell check it and things like that. I can't believe I have to say that, but spell check it. There are CVs out there, you know, there are CVs, resumes, whatever, that have typos in them and things like that. And that is just, you know, it doesn't make sense if you're saying, you know, attention to detail and then like detail spelt wrong or something, you know what I mean? Like it just, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't translate very well. So, you know, check these things, make sure that what you're sending to companies is of high quality, it looks good, there's no typos, it reads well. Don't put weird gimmicky stuff in it, like, you know, percentage bars on the skills of like how good you think you are at certain skills. If you tell them off the bat what you think you're good at and what you're not good at, then they're going to look at that and go, well, how do I know that? Where's the evidence of that? I want to be able to see myself how good they are at certain things, how much they know about certain things, and I don't necessarily want to know that they lack confidence in these other things. You know, I want to know what they're good at. And that's it. I mean, obviously in interviews you get the, you know, what's your greatest weakness and all that, but there's usually a way to answer that that's not just putting yourself down, you know. A lot of people are quite sort of willing to put themselves down. Don't know why you would think that would help you, but anyway, talk about your strengths, talk about your skills and what you're good at. But as I said, don't, you know, do gimmicky stuff like that. Readable as well. Like, there's a lot of people that have really weird, wacky layouts and stuff of CVs, or just really, really boring CVs that are hard to read and just walls of text as well. Have a nicely formatted but easy to read, sort of top to bottom, the relevant experience for the role you're going for. There's a number of different CV tips I could put in here that is a video in itself, but yeah, the general basics of a good CV is just, you know, a nice, concise, readable format that includes all the relevant skills for the job you're going for and not much else. That's kind of all there is to it. And a surprising amount of people get that wrong. So make sure your CV or resume is up to date as well, and also correct and done to a standard that you would hire that person. And yeah, and then the rest is just, as I said, all this other stuff I've been mentioned, standing out and being able to get into the sights of a company or employer of some kind, or some kind of person in charge of a project, and then being able to market yourself in a way that is attractive to these people, that will make them want to work with you. And then obviously comes the interview stage, and you know, how to get through interviews and stuff, which I did a video just previous to this one where I talk about interview tips and things like that. If you want to go and watch that, I will link it in the description. If you're still learning how to code and things as well, and you're trying to figure out, you know, where to start and how to get to a point where you are job ready this year, then I'll link another video in the description as well, that I did about a year ago or something at this point. Mic quality is not as good, and it's an older video, but all the stuff in there is still very much applicable, so I'll link that as well, and you can make a start there. But anyway, if you like this video, like, subscribe of course if you want to hear more from me, and if you got any other tips of your own that you want to share with everyone here, then, or share them with me, then leave them in the comments as well. I'd like to see any sort of personal tips that you guys have as well for getting jobs anywhere, whether it's as a software engineer, QA, products, or maybe not even in tech. Maybe you just have an interest in programming, but you work in some other capacity, and maybe you have a relevant tip that you can share here. But anyway, like I said, do all the YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.